Hello friends, thank you for watching this video. I am Mohamad and today I will be showing you some nice extensions that you can incorporate with Visual Studio Code to boost your productivity and make VS Code a little bit better. So, what are we gonna be covering today? We're gonna be covering 4 different aspects. The first one is gonna be some aesthetic extensions that's gonna change the look and feel of Visual Studio Code. The second one is gonna be some C# extension to bootstrap our .NET development. Thirdly is some miscellaneous extensions, and lastly some of the extra bits that I really like. So let's jump into it. I have already opened here my portfolio website. So in order for us to find the extension section in Visual Studio Code, all we need to do is navigate to the left hand side, and where we can see that we have 3 boxes with one trying to join in, and if we click on it, it will give us a list of all of the installed extensions as well as some of the recommended one. On top of all of that, we can see that we have a search bar that we can look for any extension that we want. What we are gonna be starting with today is some of the visual extension, which is the aesthetics one. We're gonna start by installing some themes, and we can see how it's gonna change the look and feel of Visual Studio. And then we're gonna install 2 icon pack that's gonna make it more visually appealing to identify some of the files that we're working with. So the first theme is gonna be Winter is Coming. So as we can see here, it's very simple. I have already installed it. If you haven't installed it, you're gonna see something like this. Let's go up and back. You're gonna see something like an install button, and once you click on it, this should take a few seconds, and once it's finished, it will gonna ask you to choose the theme that you prefer. If it's gonna be light or dark. So usually if I'm gonna be using this theme, I'll be using the dark black theme. So let's take a look how it's gonna be looking with the source code. So we're just gonna go back to our Explorer section, and we're just gonna see the different interface, so you got an idea of how this theme changed Visual Studio look and feel. It's a very interesting theme. I think it's actually based on a Game of Thrones theme, so if you like Game of Thrones, this is a theme that it's a must-have. So the next theme after that, it's gonna be Nord as well. I have already installed it, but if you haven't, you're gonna see like an install button here. And Nord basically give it to like a more chill blue colors. So let's check how it's gonna look. So as you can see, the entire theme changed into something more of like a light blue. And actually it's a very interesting theme. Basically all of the themes that we're gonna be displaying today are dark themes. The one after that is gonna be Dracula. This is one of the most famous themes on Visual Studio. So let's choose, and we can have Dracula normal and Dracula soft. I rather have the Dracula normal. And let's go back, and we can see how the entire file structure changed when it comes to coloring, which is very interesting as well. And now let's go back to my favorite one, which is Night Owl. And that's my favorite theme that I always try to use, and I always use the Night Owl one. And as you can see, the construct here is very easy on the eyes, and it gives a nice color scheme that you can actually use. Perfect. So the next step after the themes, it's gonna be the icons, and basically there's 2 main icons. The first is gonna be the VS Code icons, and the VS Code icons basically it has a very simple job. It's gonna be giving icons to the file extensions, so based on the file extensions. So for example here, as we can see, let's first disable it and see how it's gonna look without it. So let's uninstall it, and let's go back. So we can see, for example, right now we have CS HTML files, we have CS files, we have some JavaScript files, we have some different CSS files, and as we can see, like, these icons doesn't really give the reflection of what type we are using. It's very generic ones. So if we go back to our extensions and we choose the VS Code icons and we install it, let's put VS Code icons and let's go back, and as now we can see that our CSS now has the CSS3 icons, the JavaScript file has a more distinctive icons, our JSON has a JSON icon, even for the C# one it has a bright green color, so we can directly tell instead of the dark C# icons. Similar to our CS HTML, it has the alt color because of the razor files inside. So this icon pack will allow us to directly identify which type of file we're working with just because of the icons. The second icon pack that exists, which is also highly recommended, it's gonna be the material icon. So the material icon theme, let's set it up. It's also gonna be very similar, but it also has a very bluish color based on the material themes. As for me, I rather have the VS Code icon pack, but it's all go down to your preferences. And let's set the theme icons. Perfect. So the next step is we're going to be discussing some of the C# extension that we have. I'm sure as soon as you install Visual Studio Code and you open your first console application, you're going to need to install the C# extension, which is basically the default one that's powered by OmniSharp. So if we type C#, and as you can see, it's the first one that appears, and this one here gives you a full IDE experience. It's going to give you IntelliSense, highlighting, some references. Basically, you're going to have a similar experience, almost similar experience to what you have when it comes to developing C# in Visual Studio. It's a very powerful extension and it's really a must-have if you're planning to do any C# work. The next one is going to be C# extensions. So let's see it. C# extension, although it's no longer under development, but the extension itself, it's still really a good extension. So let's disable it and let's look how it works before and after. So let's say I want to add a new class. So under the controller folder, if I right click, I can only see a new file without anything related to C#. So if I want to, for example, create a new class, I have to create a new file. We'll call it sample class, for example, sample class.cs. And then here I have to type everything. So I have to type the namespace. We'll call it, for example, this is portfolio. And then I have to define the class, public class. We'll call it sample class. And then now I can start after I do all of these template code. So let's delete this. So this is without that extension. So let's delete this class. And now let's go back to the extensions and let's enable it. And let's navigate back to our source code, and as soon as we click on right click, we can see that we have two new menu items that we have appeared. The first one is a new C# class. So if we click on it, it's gonna ask us what do we want to name it. Let's call this similar sample class, or we can call it advanced class because it's different. Advanced class. As soon as we click enter, we can see that it has automatically picked up the right location when it comes to the namespace, and has automatically created the class for us. So although this only seems like a few seconds here and there, but it all like adds up on the long run. It's gonna also accelerate your development. Similarly, you can create interfaces. So new C# interface, and we'll call this new interface. And as well, you can see it also created an interface for us. So it's a really good extension. Some of the other aspect that this extension also covers is constructor initialization. So let's go back, and let's delete this, we don't really need it anymore. And within the class, advanced class, let's create a constructor. And for example, let's say I want to have an integer, for example, number. what I can do is I can type press command dot, and I can see initializer from parameters, and if I click on it, it will automatically create the initialization for it. So it's a simple, and it will automatically link it within the constructor itself. So it's a simple way for us to do initialization for different variables within our class, and it gives us similar behavior as Visual Studio. So it's a really highly recommended extension if you're doing any type of .NET development. So let's delete this because we don't really need it anymore. Yes, move the trash. Okay. So the next extension is also very helpful. It's gonna be the auto using. Okay, I have it here. Okay, so this is the auto using for C#. Basically, if we're trying to refer to any library, it will automatically include the using statement for it. So let's go back to our code, and let's add a sample class. We'll call it sample class. Let's say I want to use the file. So I type file, and as you can see, there is no namespace currently referring to file. As soon as I hit on enter, it's gonna ask me which reference that I want to use. I want to use system.io, and you can see it has automatically added the using system.io for me. For example, new file. For example, if I want to use the IEnumerable, so as soon as I click on that, it's gonna ask me to choose. So I'm gonna choose the collection, and it's gonna automatically add it for me. It's a very nice extension, and it will facilitate adding all of these references that you need in order to utilize them. So that are the 3 extensions that we're going to be using, or my recommendation for you when it comes to using C# in Visual Studio Code. The next ones are going to be some miscellaneous one that's going to also help you in different aspects, in different programming languages. So the first one is going to be bracket pair colorizer. So basically, as the title suggests, it's gonna be colorizing the brackets, and it's gonna make it really easy for you to identify where does this, for example, function start and where does this function end. So let's go back and let's delete this. Forgot to delete it. Delete, and let's go back, for example, to a JavaScript file. Okay, this is an empty one. Okay. So as we can see here within this JavaScript file, what we have is we have this bracket which starts here and ends here, and all of the brackets inside have different coloring, so you can tell where do they start and where do they end. So we have this initial bracket, and then within this bracket this is the second bracket which has different color, and this is the third bracket which has different color. So that way you can easily tell where does the bracket start and where does the bracket end, and what does this function do, where does this function start and where does this function end. It's a very simple extension, but it does really make a lot of difference. The other one is going to be the auto close tag. As well, the name gives it away. So the auto close tag means as soon as you open a tag, it automatically close it for you. So let's go back to a HTML file. Let's try to find an HTML file here, for example, and let's say I want to create a div. So div, no, a distributed cache div. So for example, here, as soon as I created a div, it's automatically closed it for me. And let's say I want to change, let's say inside this div I want to create a p as well, it automatically closes it for me. So it helps me keep my code organized. And it also, as well, it's a very simple tool, but again, over time it's gonna be showing you a lot. It's gonna be adding a lot of value to your development. So it's gonna be saving you a lot of time and preventing some typing bugs to show up. So the next extension is gonna be the auto rename tag. So let's go back to the extensions, and let's look for auto rename tag. It's the first one. I have already installed it. So what does that mean? Let's go back to our index.cs HTML, and as you can see here, I have div and I have p. So what happens if, for example, if I want to change this div to, for example, a table? previously I needed to rename the opening tag and the ending tag, closing tag. But now what I can do is I can just put table, and automatically we can see the ending tag is automatically populated. So let's change it back to a div. Perfect, it's automatically been updated. So again, these are simple extensions, but it's very powerful, and it will automatically enhance your development process. Perfect. So some of the extra bits that I want to cover today is two related to Git and one related to a JSON. So if you really use Git as your source code repositories, I really highly recommend to use the Git history and Git lance. So let's start with Git history. Git history basically allows you to see all of the older version of the file that you are working with, and you can actually compare it with the one that you're currently on. So let's go back to this file, for example index.cshtml, and let's say I want to check the history of this file. Let's keep those changes so we can compare. So on top here, after you install it, you can see that you have like a watch with an arrow going back. So if you click on it, it's gonna show you all of the changes that you have done in this files. It's gonna show you like a list of all of the changes, and it's going also show you the dates. So if you click, for example, on it, it's gonna show you here where did you add the changes. So we added some changes to index.html, and for example we added this images. And if you click on view, it's gonna show me the changes there in that type, in that commit itself. So it's a really powerful tool to directly see all of the changes directly from you within Visual Studio Code. The next point is, let's go back to Visual Studio Extensions, and it's gonna be Git lance. Git lance, it's one of the most famous Git extensions when it comes to Visual Studio Code. It's gonna be basically giving you all of the power of Git directly from Visual Studio Code. So let's go back here and let's do like a simple to go to a simple file. And for Git lance, you can see here on the as well on the top right hand side we have the Git lance logo. If you click here, you can see that toggle file blame, heat map changes. If you click, for example, toggle file blame, it will give you, for example, for every file where is the changes has been done and under which commit. It's a very, very powerful tool. So let's remove this for now. So for example, as well, if we click on this one here, you can go back to a previous version of how it was before you did any of the changes, and then you can move forward with this. And here, for example, if you click on it, you can navigate to any of the commits that you had before. Let's move back to where we were. And again, if you want to see, let's close this. And for example, if you want to see the changes that have been done. So the last one that we're going to be speaking of is the paste JSON as code. So let's look for it. Paste JSON as code. I have already installed it. So the first thing we're gonna do is let's go find a JSON file that I have. I have already prepared this one. It's a simple weather JSON. So if I click on Command-Shift-P and I type open quick type for JSON, it will automatically convert this JSON file for me here to a C# class. I have already presetted the language to C#, so it has automatically converted all of this JSON file without me doing any extra work to JSON file. It even added for me at the end some of the serialization settings that I can use in order for me to just copy paste it and serialize this JSON. So these were some of my favorite Visual Studio extensions. I hope you really find it helpful. Please let me know in the comments down below what's your favorite ones, and share this video and comment and subscribe. Thank you very much, and have a good day.